All right, guys, welcome to the Gospel Truth. I've finally made it. I actually was not planning on doing this tonight, so I'm glad that it worked out good enough. I got kind of a lot. The cameras are way off here, and it's been a couple weeks since I've done this, and truthfully, it'll probably be quite a bit longer before I'm able to do this again. It just so happened to work out tonight where that is just not going to work, is it? Where I could take the time to do this. I was in the middle of two projects and got finished with one, and it was so late I didn't want to start another one so late in the day. So it actually worked out. What I want to do is just let you know that here over the next course of the next month, actually technically about 5 weeks, I probably won't be able to do any of this. So just keep me in your prayers and pray that everything that I have to deal with goes well. What I want to talk about tonight, well, actually, wait a minute. Before I start talking about some of this stuff, I want to encourage you to go to YouTube, right? Restoration Movement 2.0, and click the subscribe button. And you can watch these on YouTube as well. And there's some other stuff on YouTube. After this next 5 or 6 weeks is done, I'm going to do a whole lot more with YouTube, and we're going to push that a whole lot more. So I'm probably going to change the name. I'm not going to tell you what that is just yet, so somebody doesn't steal it. But either way, we're going to be developing that more. But these videos are on there, and they're organized a whole lot better on YouTube. So you can check that out on YouTube and watch these videos when you get the chance. Also, westsidecoc.org is a great resource for you. There's lots of articles on there. I was just noticing. I don't look at that very often. Brother Robert Buna takes care of that website for us. And since I don't write a whole lot, I just simply don't have the time. He's put a whole bunch of, I noticed at least a bunch of Holger Neubauer's articles on there, which is fine with me. They look great. So check that out, westsidecoc.org. If you're in the Indianapolis area, we would love to have you come and visit with us at 2675 Kentucky Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana 46221. We meet at 9:30 on Sunday morning, and from there go into our assembly and our worship at 10:30, and then we're done. We no longer, as of this past Sunday, we no longer have an evening service. And I haven't posted this on YouTube, but I did preach on this, touching some of the basic reasons why we made this change. So you can check that out on Facebook. That was last Sunday, and I'm going to try to remember to post that to YouTube as well. Be a little easier to find. So you might check that out. If you haven't figured this out by now, what we are all about in the Church of Christ is emulating the New Testament church. We believe that it is possible to look at the scriptures and to see through command, inference, and example how we should live our lives. I don't think many people would really disagree with that, at least those who claim Christianity. But to go a step further than that, it indicates to us how we can order our lives, the things we should physically do. If we want to be just like the New Testament church, the pattern is there. There's no question about that. Now that I understand eschatology, I see this just a whole lot brighter. You know, when it came to religion and the way I was raised, I saw all of these things probably very much in black and white. Well, now it's not only is it Technicolor, which some of you are going, what's Technicolor? And the others are going, yeah, I know what that is. Not only is it that, not only is this understanding about the truth in color, it's 4K OLD ultra whatever super duper high def. It's just amazing. It's amazing. So that's one of the things that I want to talk about tonight is time for the Messiah to come. And you might think I'm saying, well, he's on his way. I'm going to tell you right now, no, he's not. As a matter of fact, he's not ever going to be on his way. We were sold a bill of goods. People told us things that just simply cannot be found in the scriptures. And I'm going to show you some proofs tonight about how there was an appointed time for Jesus to come. I don't think anybody disputes that, but I want to show you the prophecies about when this time would be, and not just him coming, being born of a virgin, that kind of thing, but how it necessarily means he must come again in that time, as he said. You see, once before I get too much into that, there's some shout outs I got to give here. Looks like Brother Mark Dotz, Sister Karen Claft, Brother Keith Geyer, James Pearson, Alan Osborne, Brother Steve Baisden, Skippy Norman, my beautiful wife. I hope I'm not messing up any of these names and so forth. We got Chaz and Tim Ogles, the venerable Tim Ogles, John Raymond Garcia, and the venerable also Roy Runyon. Don't tangle with Roy or Tim. You're grabbing the wrong end of the snake when you do. I'm just telling you that. So I want to say hey there to Brother Alan Osborne, and everybody else. So this is just fantastic. And okay, so you might think that I'm crazy and I went off the rails and I'm off my rocker to say that Jesus will not come back. Well, I have to preface what we're going to study here tonight, and I'm going to show you why from the scriptures, scriptural proof, why Jesus had to come at the time that he was appointed for him, and what that means for his second coming, why it had to be in that generation's lifetime. Not only did Jesus simply say those things, I mean, he just put it that way, which I want to show you a passage here real quick about this. Better check my YouTube. Yes, YouTube's working. It's actually working. I'm getting the hang of this stuff a little better. So this is real simple. For all you Christians out there, you got a real big problem that you cannot answer when it comes to the second coming of Christ. When Muslims come to you, when the Jews come to you, when the atheists come to you, I probably think of one or two other groups anyway, but those three alone, huge. When they come to you and they say that Jesus was a failed prophet because he said he would have his second coming, his parousia, there you go, Tim Ogles, in their lifetime, and he failed, how do you answer that? I'm talking, if you're a member of the Church of Christ, this is where I come from. How do you answer that? Because I'm telling you right now, you will stumble around yourself trying to come up with some kind of answer to sound like you've got an intelligent answer, and you simply don't. I'm not disparaging anybody. I'm not downing anyone's faith or anything like that, but I am telling you something very simple. You cannot answer that question satisfactorily because Jesus plainly said there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds in his kingdom with power and great glory. I'm kind of mixing the synoptics together there. And that's exactly what he said. So let's illustrate this. This is Matthew chapter 16, 27 and 28. Ready for this? This is what it says. The Son of Man should say about to. The translators wimped out on the word mellow. An indicative active here, I think is how this comes out. It should be about to. This is something that's in process and it's ready to come to its culmination. It's the time for these things to happen, right? So he says the Son of Man is going to, my New American Standard, should be about to come in the glory of his Father with his angels and will then repay every man according to his deeds. Now, is there anyone out there listening that would say, oh, no, this has nothing to do with Jesus's return? Who's going to say that? When Jesus comes on the clouds with his angels to judge everybody, do you suppose this is his second coming? Okay, so who's going to doubt that? Now, he said these things are about to happen. Now, let me just preface this. This keeps everything in its chronological order. This keeps everything in its systematic order, because Jesus taught that these events, without question, time and time and time again, that these events, including his return, his second coming, would happen in their lifetime. And verse 28 says, "Truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Now, there's a blue million proofs that we could use here to illustrate that this kingdom is not capital N, capital O, capital T, not talking about the day of Pentecost. Wait a minute. You're only talking just a very short while later. How many people died from the time Jesus said this to the day of Pentecost, which was what, 40, 50 days later, something like that? Only one. The language here demands that most of them would be dead. Some would still be alive to see this. Let me read it again. Verse 28, Matthew 16. "Truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Now, let me illustrate to you how this is systematic and consistent. It's systematically consistent, because in Revelation, the very first verse in Revelation, and the opening salvo in Revelation, teaches that these are events that are tachos, that are soon to take place, with speed, with haste. It's not something that takes 2,000 years to complete. Members of the Church of Christ. A good one, Robert. I like that. I just saw morning or not or noon. That's pretty good. Hey, Steve, good to see you. Snake. No, Roy. No, don't take that like I was saying you were a snake. I'm telling you, they don't realize what they're tangling with. It's metaphorical. Just saying. And we see Chaz and just so many more. And a good friend that I have come to know here recently, and a good brother in Christ, Isaac McLaren. So you all say hey to Isaac. He's a good man, just getting his feet wet with this. So it's great to see you there, brother. Okay, so all throughout Revelation, you see heaven is open. If you're teaching that you still go to the Hadean realm when you die, then you don't believe Revelation when it says heaven was open. You didn't believe Paul when he said, "I'm going there." You say, "Oh, it's going to take him a couple thousand years or more." No, that's a failed hermeneutic. When you start saying, "Well, God didn't really mean that," that's a failed hermeneutic. God meant what he said. Jesus meant what he said and what he taught. He expected the people that were standing in front of him to understand it when he said, "There are some standing here who will not die until they see these events take place." Mark chapter 8. Let's look at a parallel passage here. Mark chapter 8 and verse 38. By the way, what is the context of what Jesus is talking about? Jesus is talking about eschatology. Eschatology is a study of the end time things of the end, not the end of time. The Bible nowhere speaks of the end of time. Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 21, for those of you who still tote your KJV, it says world without end. And there's no question that the Greeks used this phrase, and I don't remember what it is. If I wasn't on here, I'd probably remember. But anyway, there's no question that the Greeks use this phrase, and the scholars verify this in Ephesians 3 and verse 21. It's the strongest way that they can illustrate endlessness. World without end, forever and ever. And when they say forever and ever, it's not a Randy Travis song. It is literally forever and ever. Okay, so there's the context. And the consistency of this. Mark chapter 8. Now, I want you to notice here in verse 38, this context is about eschatology. And he says, Mark 8:38, whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation. The adulterous and sinful generation, my friends, is not the gospel generation. Are you serious about that? I mean, do you really think that Jesus came, did his messianic work, he was the atonement for sin, and accomplished it, defeated death, and we still live in a wicked and perverse time? No. It's the law of Moses. That generation, and even Josephus attests to this, and Jesus proclaimed it. Deuteronomy chapter 32 predicted it, prophesied about it, that generation was the worst. Think about this. They killed the Son of God. Doesn't get any worse than that, guys. So, anyway, so he says that whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with his holy angels. Okay, this is Matthew 16, verse 27. Same idea, same context. Jesus clearly says here, if you're ashamed of these eschatological teachings of mine, then I'm ashamed of you. Now, before we move on, and don't think that we're done here with this section of Scripture, but you need to understand Revelation chapter 19 and verse 10. This is the reason that you cannot answer the question when the Muslims, the Jews, and the atheists say Jesus was a failed and a false Messiah because he said he would come back in their lifetime and he didn't. Well, they see it. The reason you can't answer that is because you're trying to follow an ancient Jewish narrative about future coming of Messiah. And people have been doing that for 2,000 years. They've been intermingling the teachings of the Jews in the first century who rejected Jesus. They had their eyes closed. They rejected the fact that God had judged them through the destruction of Jerusalem and totally destroyed everything that they knew and brought it into the law. They're still looking for a Messiah. And if you're still looking for a Messiah to come in the future, you are joining in with those people of that generation that rejected Jesus. Just saying. Revelation 19, verse 10, the last part of it says the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. You can't answer the question of the Muslims and the Jews and the black Hebrew Israelites, for that matter. And you can't answer the points that the atheists make about Jesus being a failed prophet because he said he would return for them in their lifetime. And they'll quote John 14, 1 through 4, when Jesus said, I'm going to build a place for you. If it wasn't true, I would not have told you. I'm coming back, and you'll see it. See? They'll quote those things. You know, they'll take you there, and they're just going to twist you all inside and out until you look like a pretzel, a spiritual pretzel. And you're going to, here's what you're going to do. This is the only way that you can deal with those people is you in your piety. You cross your arms, and in your most superior church lady voice, I can't do the church lady voice. Half of you watching don't even know who the church lady is. Check it out. That was good stuff. That was funny. And just in our superior voice, we're going to condemn them because they're not really Christians anyway. It doesn't really matter. And we can't convert them. Really? What is being a Christian about? Come on, guys. Either you're going to stand for Jesus, you're going to stand for what he stood for, or you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to be guilty of the exact same thing that those people in the first century that rejected Jesus were guilty of. And you know what that was? We might as well be standing in that crowd shouting, we have no king but Caesar. Crucify him, crucify him. Just saying. Okay, so here's what we need to understand. All of these events were to take place. Let's go back over to Mark 8. In their lifetime, Jesus plainly said it. And the only way you can get around that is, guess what? To deny his plain words. Matter of fact, before I make the rest of my point from Mark 8, verse 38 and following, I want you to understand that Jesus said, for all of you people who are out there who are going, oh, no, we don't need the Old Testament. Do you really want to argue with your Savior on this? John chapter 5. Now, if you look at starting at verse 44, this is the reason you can't answer the Muslims and the Jews and the atheists and the black Hebrew Israelites. This is the reason, because our faith is built upon a house of cards that the rejecting Jews built 2,000 years ago. If you're viewing Jesus coming back in the future, you're continuing the exact same narrative that the Jews began in the first century, well, continued in the first century, rejecting Jesus as the Messiah and looking for the real Messiah to come somewhere in the future and to have this resurrection, an Ezekiel 37 resurrection. I'm not going there. I'm not doing it. I'm not adding one more card to that house. And with every breath that I have left in me, I'm going to preach the truth, whether people like it or not. Now, here we go. John chapter 5, verse 44. This is the reason you can't answer that question. The accusation that Jesus was a failed prophet because he said he would return in their lifetime, and he obviously had no clue about it. This is the reason you can't answer that, because you think that the Old Testament does not have anything for us today. And if you're a member of the Church of Christ, you're one of the worst ones of the bunch. The traditional modern-day Church of Christ. The Church of Christ understands and believes Jesus' words. Listen to this. John 5:44. How can you believe me when you receive glory from one another? And you do not seek the glory that is from the one and only God. Do not think that I came to accuse you before the Father. The one who accuses you is Moses. Look at this. This is language from Deuteronomy 31. I'm telling you, this is awesome. The one that accuses Moses, in whom you have set your hope. I'm telling you right now, if your hope is in a future bodily resurrection, which the scriptures never, ever, 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 world without end, talk about, then your hope is in the same failed hope of those first century Jews. But we're not done, verse 46. For if you would believe Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? The reason you can't answer that question and can't explain it without stammering all over yourself and then finally getting frustrated and giving up is simply because, guess what? You rejected what Jesus said. John 5:44-47. Hello, Michael Adams. Now, need a break. Okay, that really helped. Very refreshing. Okay, so we're going to continue on. We're going back to Mark chapter 8, because see, we read that. We haven't even got to the good stuff yet. Well, this is good stuff. There's no question about this. None. Okay, so we read Mark 8, verse 38, parallel to Mark 16:27, right? But just because it's a chapter break does not mean there's a transition in thought. Just like there's no transition in thought between verses 27 and 28. He said in verse 27, it's about to take place. In verse 28 of Matthew 16, he said, some standing here. We'll see it. Same time frame, both passages. Likewise, in chapter 9 and verse 1 of Mark, it's continuation. Look at this. And Jesus was saying to them, this is verse 28 of Matthew 16. But notice what he says. Jesus was saying to them, truly there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God. Listen to this, after it has come with power. Now, for those who have a premillennial slant, and yes, members of the Church of Christ have adopted some premillennial slants. Talk to them. They don't know if the kingdom's coming, or if it came, or if it partially came, or if it's going to be concluded, or what the case is, or if there's a millennial reign, or there's a antichrist that shows up. You talk. I'm telling you, I love my brethren, but they have rejected the teachings of Jesus in favor of a false narrative that's been perpetuated for the past 2,000 years by the Jews who are just working systematically to get these first century Christians to buy into their false narrative. And the first century Christians did it. Why do you think all of these first century, second century, third century guys, church fathers, they're really not church fathers, they don't set policy. They were wrong 2,000 years ago because the first century church believed Jesus would come in their lifetime. Why? because Jesus said it. It was just that simple. They were standing there in front of him. They heard it and they believed it. Now, if you want to be a first century Christian, you have to believe this. If you want to be just like those first century Christians, you have to believe what Jesus said. Otherwise, you're rejecting him. Okay. All right. Mark 9, verse 1. Let's read it again. Truly I say to you, there's some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power. Jesus said, I am coming. These are tied together. You're going to see this take place. You're going to see this take place. Okay. So Jesus said that these events would take place. These things would take place. We know that Christ came at the appointed time. I don't think we really have to go over that. But I want to show you when this appointed time was. So I've made a few notes. So I'm getting my notes. I have a stack of notes because I'm preparing for something potentially big. And I'm hoping that it'll happen. And I can't tell you. I'm just killing me. I can't tell you yet. But anyway. But this really has nothing to do with that. It's just something I came across while preparing for this, something great big that I saw this and I'm like, no way, this is good stuff. And I've contemplated this a lot. Do you realize that the Old Testament teaches about Jesus, teaches about his, for lack of a better way to put this, but I just want to make this as simple as I can, teaches about his first and second coming. I was talking with some preachers, some Christians recently. So if you're one of the people that I spoke to and you said this, it's okay. Nobody knows because I'm not going to reveal that because I want you to keep listening. But the thing is, it's just not one guy. This is many people who have responded thusly when I ask this question. Are there any Old Testament prophecies about the second coming of Jesus? And I'm going to say probably 75, 80% of the time, the answer from most people is no. The Old Testament does not prophesy about the second coming of Messiah. And the answer to that is, you're wrong. It's all over the place. Let me give you an illustration. This is why we can't answer the Muslims and the Jews and the atheists and the black Hebrew Israelites. I might be able to think of somebody else before this is over with. Because we lack in knowledge from our school teacher, our tutor. We've been skipping class, guys. Isaiah chapter 26. I think maybe it's 25. I got to look at this. Hey, don't blame me. If I can get within 3 or 4 or 5 pages of where I need to be, I'm doing good. So a lot of you guys are a whole lot better at that than I am. This is chapter 25 of Isaiah 25. Now, listen to this. If this isn't about the second coming of Christ and when he would come, I don't know what is. Ready for this? Chapter 25, verse 1. O Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you. I will give thanks to your name, for you have worked wonders, plans formed long ago with perfect faithfulness. This is exactly what we're talking about here tonight. You see, God worked these plans with perfect faithfulness, and these plans were formed long ago. So the Messiah must come at the appointed time. If he missed his window of opportunity, it would never happen again. So for all those in the first century that said, no, this wasn't the Messiah, and some of them believe this I don't understand why, but some of them actually said, who witnessed the coming of the Lord, and they couldn't see it. They actually said that Vespasian was their Messiah. What? You got to be kidding. Matter of fact, these Jews, I don't have this list in front of me, but if you look through history, the Jews, the people who claim to be Jews, by the way, Jeremiah chapter 31 clearly says that when the law of Moses disappears, when it goes away, Israel ceases to be a nation from before me forever. If you're reading into that he's talking about you, no. Bad. He's talking about that time. He's talking about these plans that are going to be worked with perfect faithfulness. And here's when the culmination of these things takes place. This is to prove, one, when they would come, right? No. The Messiah. I have to take a little sidebar right here. There are many Messiahs in the Bible. I know a lot of you got your finger on the button. Oh, I'm getting rid of this guy, and click. Well, if you do, fine, but you're never going to be challenged. I'm challenging you. There are many Messiahs in the Bible. There's only one, the Messiah. And this is the one, in an eschatological sense, is prescribed to come at a certain time. And the Old Testament tells us exactly when he would come, which I am in the process of showing you. Verse 2, Isaiah 25, you have made a city into a heap, a fortified city into a ruin, a place of strangers is a city no more. Stop. Don't read any further. Just yet. So this is reminiscent of the destruction of Jerusalem. Could Isaiah be talking about this 586 destruction from Babylon? Maybe we could read that into this, right? Because Isaiah was, before those events, right? But continue reading now. It will never be rebuilt. Jesus quotes this in Daniel 12. Same concept. Same consistency. Jesus quotes this in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 21 when he says, these things are going to take place. I will have my parousia, my second coming. Look it up. Matthew 24 and verse 3, when the apostles asked them, they didn't ask about the end of the world. They wanted to know when his parousia would be and the end of the age. That evil age that we spoke about just a few moments ago that Jesus pinpointed, that was that age. This sinful and wicked generation, it was them. When will this age come to an end? You see, the Jews only knew two ages. This age and that age, or the age to come. In the first century, they were living in this age. The age of Moses. The age to come was the age of what? Messiah, when all things were fulfilled. Matthew 5, verse 17 and 18. Just saying. So we're back here to Isaiah 25. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I am not going to limit myself. Tonight, I'm unplugged. We're going to go. We're just going to go. But I'll be merciful because I've only got so much energy left. Maybe if I drink more of this, it's got a little bit of caffeine, but it has no sugar. It's sweetened with stevia. It's actually, for soft drinks, decent. And it tastes like Dr. Pepper. Just saying. And then, no, I'm not a paid spokesman. I just like it. It's nice. Every once in a while, I have a little bit. Back to Isaiah 25. It's never going to be revealed. Therefore, a strong people will glorify you. Cities of ruthless nations will revere you. What happened at the destruction of Jerusalem in 70? People came, they said, surely the God of the Jews hates them. Wow, look at what he has done. Maybe we should follow him. Verse 4, for you have been a defense for the helpless, a defense for the needy, and a refuge from the storm, a shade from the heat. For the breath of the ruthless is like a rainstorm against a wall. Like heat and drought, you subdue the uproar of aliens. Like heat by the shadow of a cloud, the song of the ruthless is silenced. The Lord of hosts, verse 6, will prepare a lavish banquet for all peoples on this mountain. By the way, Jesus said Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would sit down at this banquet with that generation in that generation's time. Either way, anyway, a banquet of aged wine, choice pieces with marrow, a refined aged wine. And on this mountain, what mountain? Whenever you see a mountain talked about, it's making reference to this holy mountain. Jerusalem was a city set on 7 hills. Yes, it was. Don't argue with me. It was set on, I don't remember all of Mount Scopus, Mount of Offense, Mount of Olives was one of them. So you can't tell me it wasn't. Rome was not the only city built on 7 hills. Matter of fact, I think Chicago and New York are built on 7 hills. And people do that intentionally. So anyway, it's there. It's just the most popular references to Rome. All right. Okay. If I start reading all these comments, I will get so distracted and sidetracked. Like I haven't already been, right? Okay. Anyway, let's keep on keeping on, guys. Oh, this Israel only stuff. Joseph. My friend, you are just so far off, and I don't even have time to go over this. I got a soundtrack. I'll do an Israel only thing one of these days. But I got a soundtrack here. Isaiah 25, verse 6. The Lord of hosts will prepare a lavish banquet for all peoples on this mountain. Io. Right? For all peoples on this mountain. Oh, wait a minute. All the peoples and the lost tribes were the Jews. And they were Gentiles. Because they were lost, they were called Gentiles. You see how people get, and try to explain things away? Verse 7, and on this mountain he will swallow up the covering which is over all peoples. Here's how I know all peoples is literally what it means, all peoples. The covering was over all peoples. Death reigned from Adam until Moses. What is that? Romans 5? Let me look at this. Romans 5, verse 12. We're going back to Isaiah. Hold your finger there, right? Isaiah 25. Verse 12 of Romans 5. Therefore, just as through one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin, so death spread to all men because all sinned. I gotcha. Now, if you're going to say that this is physical death, then and it was for Israel only, then only Jews throughout all of history would be dying. That's a little bit of a problem. But this is where your failed hermeneutic comes in, where you say, oh, well, that didn't really, God didn't really mean that. He wasn't really serious when he said Adam was going to die. When God told Adam, you'll surely die when you eat of that, Adam, he didn't really mean it. It's a failed hermeneutic. Here's why it's failed. And this is where you find yourself stumbling all over, guess what? The Jews, the Muslims, who else did I say? The atheists, the Black Hebrew Israelites. Hey, there's, you name the religion that's against Christianity, they're going to use this argument. All of the Eastern religions, this is the deal. This is why, as a Christian, you just stumble all over yourself and you go, well, you're lost anyway, and I can't save you. Really? I mean, what about this idea of evangelism, guys? If you're a Christian, you better be getting your game on. You're running out of time to take somebody with you. So you just put that in your hat and see if it's lumpy. I don't know. That's all I could come up with on short notice. Alrighty. I'm going to keep reading. Verse 13, for until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed where there's no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam until Moses. So once the law of Moses, which is what this is talking about, this is your time frame. From the Genesis account with Adam, all the way, all those laws, all those people died spiritually. Death reigned from Adam till Moses. So does that mean once the law of Moses was taken out of the way, which Jesus said he came to fulfill every last jot and tittle of it? Luke chapter 21, he says, these are the days of vengeance. This is what, starting about verse 20 or so? In which all things which are written shall be fulfilled. Death reigned from Adam until Moses, even over those who had not sinned in the likeness of the offense of Adam, who is a type of him who is to come. The death is spiritual death. Did Adam die the day that he ate thereof? Yes. There's no question about that. God said it. Adam did it. And when he did, he died. And if you're going to be a believer, then you have to believe that. And you can't explain it to me and say, well, he didn't really die, but he did die, but he didn't die. But he did die. Guys, he didn't die for another 930 years or something. 930 years. 930 years. And no wonder everyone says, well, Jesus said, I'm coming back in this generation. So I guess God meant a day is 1,000 years. So we still got another 1,000 years to go, man. So I can party it up. No. As we keep studying this, you're going to see when the Messiah was to come. And the necessity that his second coming follows immediately. Okay, back to Isaiah chapter 25, verse 7. He will swallow up the covering which is over all peoples, even the veil which is stretched over all nations. And that is, if I could do a drum roll, I would. I need to have some sound effects. Sheol, or the Hadean realm. That's the covering that was over all people. Verse 8, he will swallow up death for all time. When? When the fortified city, verse 2, becomes a ruin. A place of strangers is a city no more, and it will never be rebuilt. The covering will be destroyed. That's Sheol. That's the Hadean realm. You know, people in the Church of Christ, my background, we harped long and hard on Luke 16 and how there's a great there's a area fixed. Maybe it's spherical, maybe it's a flat plane. It's got a gulf fixed in the not golf. Golf. It's not a mini golf course. And it separates those in the comfort of or the bosom of Abraham, and then those who are in torment. And they can't pass out of there and go, and they can't pass from one to the other, not even for a drop of water on the rich man's tongue, because he said, these flames are hot. So we would long and hard on that. And we would say, oh, this is what's coming in the future when it's destroyed. When did the Bible say Sheol would be destroyed? When the covering over all peoples, and remember, death reigned from Adam until Moses, and the reason it reigned, or Sheol, or the Hadean realm, was in process, was valid. It kept people from going to be with the Father because the atonement for sin had not been made. So they had when their soul departed their body, they had to dwell someplace, right? So that's what Sheol was, place of these departed souls. Everybody knows that. And that was destroyed at the coming of the Lord. If it wasn't, then you can't be saved. That's what salvation is. the reuniting of us with our Father, the restoration of that relationship that we had with God, we, mankind, in the garden. When does this happen? When the city is destroyed and never rebuilt. By the way, let's see. The temple was destroyed, the first one, in 586. It was rebuilt and then destroyed in 167, 8, 5, something like that, somewhere in that area. The Hasmoneans, anyway. So that lasted, what, 300 years, roughly? Then it was rebuilt, and then it was destroyed in 70. So you've got, what, about 300 years again, roughly? A little less? See where I'm going with this? So the last time it was destroyed, Jesus quoted Isaiah 25, Daniel 12, and he said it will never be rebuilt. So the last time that happened, and it hasn't been rebuilt through not because people haven't tried, but it's never been rebuilt. 2,000 years and counting. I'd say the odds are in our favor now, guys, that it's never going to be rebuilt, as the scriptures attest. Got to keep reading. When the city's destroyed, the Hadean realm is destroyed. Neither one's ever rebuilt, repopulated again in a spiritual fashion. I know people live in Jerusalem, but it's desolate. It became desolate. No question about that. Verse 8 says, he will swallow up death for all time. That's 1 Corinthians 15:26. What's the time statement? When the city's destroyed, when the Hadean realm is no longer, and he will remove the reproach from his people from all the earth. For the Lord has spoken, and it will be said in that day, listen to this, in what day? The day when the city's destroyed, when it is never rebuilt. Verse 7, something's happening on this mountain. Death is being swallowed up. The reproach of his people has been removed. They're no more. The Israelites no more. It will be said in this day, verse 9, behold, this is our God for whom we have waited, that he might save us. This can't be the first coming of the Lord. It cannot be. The city's been destroyed. The Hadean realm has been destroyed. It's never going to be rebuilt again at his second coming. Okay, give me another 5 hours because I'm going to need it. I'm not going to take it. I just need it. I'm not going to take it. I really am trying to do this kind of quick. I'm not trying real hard though. I'm just going with the flow, baby. Yes, really, honey. She's that way, then that way. Okay. Wait, she's that way, then that way, then that way. She's sitting down on the couch. I just gave you the directions to the couch in my living room. Anyway, this is our God for whom we have waited, that he might save us. Oh, no. Is this the same? Yes. As Hebrews chapter 9? Yes. Can I get an amen? Can I get a hallelujah? Guys, the reason we're not making this connection is because of John 5, 44 to 47. And Jesus said, you don't understand my words because you don't understand Moses. Jesus gave some words to his apostles through inspiration that they needed to pass on. He gave it to them, said, you tell these to others. And that's exactly what they did. Hebrews chapter 9. Verse 28, so Christ also, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time for salvation. You mark it right there without reference to sin. To those who eagerly await him. When Jesus returns, salvation comes. At the time, Isaiah 25, this is directly referring to this. At the time when the city's destroyed, it's never rebuilt. And the Lord comes. And death is destroyed. spiritual death, that is the Hadean realm. Hosea 13, verse 14, uses the same wordology, word analogies, okay, to paint the same picture about death and Sheol being used synonymously. And that's what we're seeing there. So when was the Lord to come? At the appointed time. When was this? In the first century. Oh, but we got 6 more points to go through. And if I do them as quickly as I did this one, and I'm still not done with this one because I have to show you Hebrews 9. Then I think maybe we can go through these a little quicker, at least 1 or 2 of them, because I'll just pick a couple of these that are just, oh yeah. The appointed time would be evidenced by the destruction of the temple. Not the destruction of the temple brings the law to an end and then the Lord comes. No, the destruction of the temple is the evidence or the sign that these things had been completed. Let's read Hebrews 9. Not the whole thing, just, verse 8. Ready? The Holy Spirit is signifying this, that the way into the holy place has not yet been disclosed while the outer tabernacle is still standing, which is a symbol. The outer tabernacle, the temple, is a symbol for the present time. Let me point a couple of things out. What does the temple represent? The Old Covenant, the law of Moses. During the writing of Hebrews, the present time was still being symbolized as the law of Moses by the temple, that it was still standing as the sign that the law, look at the Greek, still had standing. Oh, yeah. So we need to go through Paul in Acts about how he was still following the law, and multitudes of the brethren were still following the law, and they were all zealous for the law. And Paul had to go and take a vow in the temple, and he had to pay for those 4 men who had taken the vow. He had to shave his head. Show me in the New Testament where Christians are commanded to do that. Guys, the law still had standing. I can't explain all the ins and outs about it, but here's the way I can explain it. You had the law of Moses that was winding down. It was coming to an end. It was dying. While it was dying, the dead and dying carcass of the law of Moses was fertilizing, get this, the gospel and the kingdom as it grew to its maturity. It's just like I was taught in 4th grade. Put a dead fish in with your corn seeds and let it fertilize, and then you get something that can support life. Everybody gets that, and that's what was going on. Now, I cannot even keep up with all these comments. So I do appreciate y'all making them, and I try to answer some of these. Hey, I got a hallelujah. I see one from Keith Geyer. Sorry, I'm a little slow, guys. Hearty amen. Yeah, appreciate that. Okay. Stephen Whitsett is brother, my friend. Actually, I don't know. Are you my brother, or have you been immersed into Jesus and added to him? I hope so. I mean, I know you go into a Church of Christ school, but I don't remember. I don't know. I don't remember if you said you were Calvinist in your plan of salvation, or if you were first century Christian. I don't remember. Either way, brother or my friend, whatever the case may be, I hope it's brother. I'm going to say this. I love you and I love your soul, but you're a lot. Yeah, it takes one to know one. But I say that in love. Say that in love. Okay. Let's keep on going. I heard that the tabernacle was a symbol for the present time. Once the symbol was gone, it was the sign that these things had taken place. even if Stephen doesn't like that. All right. Like I said, I love you, my friend. You're really irritating to talk to, but I love you, and I love your soul, and I know the Lord does too. I'm trying to be patient with that. Okay, here we go. The appointed time. I'm going to go through a few of these points rather quick, but I'm still going to try to do them justice. Let's go to Daniel chapter 9. Wait a minute. We're going to do Daniel chapter 9 rather quick. Yeah, I don't have to make this forever and ever. World without end. We could, but I don't have to. Daniel chapter 9, we've got the 70 weeks. All right, you ready for this? There is not one single, I'm putting this in bold, all caps, underline, italicized, right? There's not one single prophecy in Daniel that has its fulfillment per Daniel and all of the New Testament writers past the time of the fourth kingdom, the fourth consecutive kingdom. Get your gap theory out of there. You can be squeezing an awful lot into a little period, right? Past that fourth kingdom, which was Rome. Not one single prophecy. So, Messiah, the Messiah, I'm going to show you this. So, we're here in Daniel chapter 9. The Old Testament obviously talks about the coming of the Lord. Ready for this? Here we go. Daniel 9, verse 24, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Yeah, I said I could do this in a short period of time. I'm here to tell you, it's not going to happen. I'm going to try. But just in this, just what I read, one verse. Okay, so here's what is going to happen within this 70 weeks, starting from the decree, okay, when the decree was issued. I'm going to go through the decree. It'll take me too long and I'll get way too sidetracked. So when the decree is issued at the time of Babylon, to the end of the 70 weeks, which brings us to Babylon again. How could that be? Because Babylon was destroyed. It was gone. It was not known. Babylon fell, remember? Daniel 2. This is part of the vision. Babylon was gone. We see this, we just see this everywhere. There it is. It's all there, all through Daniel. All these four kingdoms, Babylon's gone. The first kingdom is gone, it's destroyed. Historically, we know that. But Babylon was Jerusalem. Peter even called it Babylon. He said in the last part of 1 Peter, I think, said, those who are in Babylon greet you. He was making a tongue-in-cheek joke about Jerusalem being Babylon. Actually, I'm sure there was inspiration in that. Let's see. Come back, Chaz, later when you get some time. Watch the rest of it. I really am going to try to wrap this up quick. Kind of. We may only get through Daniel 9 here. So all of these 70 weeks is from Babylon to Babylon. No matter how you look at it. You might want to be able to pinpoint it and say this day or that day, but good luck, because so has about 10 billion other people, and they've all got 10 billion different interpretations, essentially. But it does go from Babylon to Babylon. He says, it has been decreed for your people and your holy city. What did we just read in Isaiah 25? He's just continuing the prophecies that are being worked with perfect faithfulness. To finish the transgression. What's the transgression? Well, he says to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin. So, wait a minute. Did sin come in, or I'm sorry, come to an end on the cross? So many people have the AD 33 theory going on. And they say everything ended on the cross. Wow, you just got so many problems of everything ending on the cross? No. No, the church couldn't come in its fullness with this. It didn't even come in its fullness on the day of Pentecost. If it did, then you tell me this. And if the kingdom was fully mature on the day of Pentecost, then how is it possible that nobody was qualified to be an elder if the church was fully mature? How is it possible? I mean, there's a blue million things here that just are not going to happen because the church needed time to grow from its infancy to its maturity. Okay. He says to make atonement for iniquity. When was the atonement made? And I know you automatically go, oh, that was on the cross. No. It wasn't. The cross was part of it. And that's exactly what Colossians 2 is teaching. It's part of it. But that you got to remember that old law could never save anybody. That's what was nailed to the cross. That old law could never save anybody. Now, I know I'm not doing this the justice that I want to, but anyway, the atonement for iniquity could not happen. If you were a Jew in the first century and you were waiting for the atonement to take place, here's what you did. You came to Jerusalem. You waited for the priest to slaughter the sacrifice, to ascend up into, according to Hebrews 9, heaven. The temple was the physical representation of heaven. So the high priest, i.e. Jesus, ascends up into heaven, the temple, i.e. Jesus ascending into actual heaven, Acts 1, to make the atonement, to offer the sacrifice. Jesus had, since he was the atonement, he was the one who had to go and present it himself. There was no other high priest like him. I have to do this. And I'm not going to say I'm sorry, other than it is going to take a little time. Let's come over here to Leviticus 17. If the shedding of innocent blood was enough, crucifying an innocent man, if that was enough, then that's all that needed to take place. That's what people are teaching today. But the fact is, there were plenty of innocent men who died on the cross, a horrible crucifixion, just like Christ, maybe worse. Maybe their death lingered even longer. So that death was not enough. But Jesus said, when you see my physical death and then my physical resurrection, Matthew 12, then you know that's the sign that all these things are taking place. That's the sign that this generation gets, that salvation is here. Okay? Now, look at Leviticus chapter 17. Look at verse 11. We often go here to illustrate that the life is in the blood, right? And so we proof text this like crazy. But what does it say? For the life of the flesh is in the blood. Okay, we got it. And I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls, not your physical body, for your souls. Follow me on this. Jesus was offered on the altar. He was slain the same time the sacrifice was being killed. And he says, I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. So we got to get this physical redemption out of here. The blood was for their souls. Ready? Keep reading. For it is the blood by reason of the soul. Mine says life, but it should be soul that makes atonement. Jesus paid the price. Yes, he had to die physically. But if that's all it would have been just another crucifixion. I'm not making light of the death of Christ at all. As a matter of fact, I'm exonerating it and exalting it more than I ever have. And I understand it more than I ever have. Because there was a price that had to be paid. Once the soul of Jesus departed his body and went to the Hadean realm, guess what happens? Let's read it again. See, plug it in and see if this makes sense. For it is the blood by reason of the soul that makes atonement. That's Isaiah 53. You look at it. Jesus paid the price in his soul. If he had to go to the Hadean realm, he could not go to heaven. And he did. 2 Peter 3 verse 19 teaches us that that's where he went. And he preached to the souls who are in prison. A term the Jews have been very familiar with, synonymous with Hades or Sheol. And that's where he went. And he paid the price in his soul of being separated like every other human being to ever live from God up to that point. So we don't have to do that today. If you haven't been immersed into Christ and clothed in him, Galatians 3:26 and 27, if you haven't done that, how can you be in him? He's sitting at the right hand of the Father. Matter of fact, have you ever noticed, just saying this, as you go through Revelation, Jesus in the beginning is kind of separate from Yahweh. So Yeshua separate from Yahweh. And then by the time Revelation is over and it's reached its pinnacle, the two are one. So, man, that's just powerful enough. But I don't have time to go through all that. Or even if I could, the life was in the blood. The blood paid for the soul atonement. And the soul was the one that made the atonement. And I had to make that point. Back to Daniel 9. That's when the atonement for iniquity happened in the first century. If Jesus missed that opportunity to fulfill all things as he said he would, then he's a failed prophet. And the Muslims and the Jews and the atheists and the black Hebrewites are correct. And they're not, because we got the proof right here. So, also, Daniel 9:24, he says to bring in everlasting righteousness. What's everlasting righteousness? Let's see. Ephesians 3 calls it the eternal purpose of the church. Let's see. Isaiah 9:7 says it's a kingdom that's set up, that its increase will have no end, and the increase of his government, of his rule and his reign will have no end. And yet people today want to say, well, Jesus hands over the kingdom. As soon as he conquers everything, he hands over the kingdom. What king or conqueror in his right mind would ever say, yep, I'm done. I conquered. Here, you can have it. No, he sits down and rules with his Father. First Chronicles chapter 7, or maybe 17. Also, he rules in the midst of his Father, according to First Kings, the first 2 or 3 chapters. That's what Solomon did. He ruled in the midst of his Father. Tell me there's not an illustration there. Pretty good one, I think. The next part, just in verse 24 of Daniel 9. Then he says to seal up vision and prophecy. No more vision today, no more prophecy. You can't have vision and prophecy past the coming of Messiah. The Messiah. Zechariah chapter 13. Do I do or do I don't? I do. Zechariah 13. In that day, verse 1, a fountain will be opened for the house of David and for the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and impurity. Do you realize that Zechariah just quoted what we just read out of Daniel? Do you realize that Daniel just quoted essentially what Isaiah said? Tell me there's not consistency. Okay, Zechariah 13:1. In that day, well, what day? Go back and read chapter 12. It's when Jerusalem's destroyed. when Jesus is pierced, verse 10 and 11 and 12, and about the people looking on him and mourning. That was in that day, that generation. That's first Revelation 1:7, right? And following. In that day, Zechariah 13:1, a fountain will be opened for the house of David, for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, for sin and impurity. It will come about in that day, declares the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols from the land, and they will no longer be remembered. And I will also remove the prophets and the unclean spirits from the land. Then he goes on to say, if anyone still prophesies, they're to be put to death because they're prophesying falsely. Ugh. I mean, am I the one that sees that? No, I'm not. Many of the Pentecostals, those if anyone's watching of the Pentecostal persuasion, you've heard that you're not. This is not the first time you've ever heard this concept. The gifts ended. Prophecy, well, yeah, many don't think, but the gifts of the Spirit are clearly understood by so many, and rightfully so, that they come to an end at the second coming of Jesus. That's why so many of the Pentecostals and so many people today, whether it's arbitrary or they actually studied it out, they realize that since Jesus hasn't come by their paradigm, that they should still be able to raise the dead, although they can't. I've never seen anybody do that. By the way, I've never seen anybody grow an arm. I've never seen anybody regain their sight. I've heard of people saying they have by a miracle. I've never seen it. Come on. If you can't do everything they did in the first century, then you can do nothing that they did in the first century when it comes to those gifts of the Spirit. Here we go. He says it'll all come to an end. This guy's going to say, I'm not a prophet. I used to prophesy, but now I'm a farmer. Back to Daniel 9. Vision and prophecy are sealed up. When? At the end of this fourth kingdom. When this kingdom is destroyed. I don't even have time to talk about that. Okay, so verse 25, he says, so you are to know and discern, I'm in Daniel 9, you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and it will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. Yeah, there's a lot of distress that happened between the destruction of the first temple and the rebuilding, and its second destruction, and then the second temple being rebuilt. And then until it was destroyed. Lots of distress going on. Verse 26. Then after 62 weeks, the Messiah, the anointed one, this is the only section of Scripture that talks about the Messiah. Talking about Christ. He's obviously the atonement. It's already been mentioned. None of the other Messiahs that we've made mention of, these are just people who are anointed, like kings, David, and so on. Okay, so we see that these messiahs were not the Messiah, but the Messiah, the anointed one, the Moshiach, or I don't know how it's pronounced in Hebrew. Englishized, it's Messiah. So notice what he says. The Messiah. After 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. When was the city and the sanctuary destroyed? As we've already read, for the final time, never to be rebuilt again. And Jesus quoted it when they asked, when will the end of this age happen? Not the end of the world, Matthew 24 and verse 3. That's a gross mistranslation. And they knew it. They did it intentionally. Lots of good translators have changed that to what it should read now. Matter of fact, even the New King James changed it to end of the age. So what does that say? Okay, so the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end will come with a flood. The flood being the Romans, the Jews, all these people coming in. There's a flood of blood. I mean, there's lots of ways you can look at this, and it came with a flood. No question about that. Even to the end, there will be war. We know that this war or the war was going on at that time and never again since. Then he says, desolations are determined. He'll make a firm covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction. It's made desolate until a complete destruction. The one that is decreed is poured out on the one that makes desolate. From Babylon, ancient Babylon, to the Babylon of the first century, which was Jerusalem. Very consistent that way. When was Messiah to come? At the end of the 70 weeks, in the first century. No gap theory here. There's not one shred of evidence, not one passage all through Daniel that will allow you to insert 2,000 years and counting. You're going to really, really, really have to do some spiritual gymnastics, because every time it's spoken of, guess what? It's consecutive. You've got the Babylonians, the Medes and the Persians, the Greeks, and then the fourth kingdom. No gap of thousands of years. The reason you are denying the very words inspired by God through the Holy Spirit is because you're buying into the Jews still looking for the Messiah to come, when this clearly says the Messiah came at the destruction of Jerusalem. Just saying. That's part of my first point. Oh man, there's so much here. Let me say this. Let me show you something. Genesis 49. This one can be made pretty quick. To all of the people say there are no passages. First off, we've just read 2 from Isaiah 25 and Daniel 9, when the Messiah would come at the end, the destruction of Jerusalem. Guys, this is exactly what Jesus taught in the Olivet Discourse. So anyway, here's what we read. We read in Genesis 49, look at verse 1. It says, then Jacob summoned his sons and said, assemble yourselves that I may tell you what will befall you in the days to come, my New American Standard says. But literally, it's the end of the days. Your Bible likely footnotes that. If not, just go to Bible Hub and look at all the different translations. You'll see it there. Young's Literal and some of the other literal translations will include these things. So Jacob is summoned to tell, this is directly in line with Deuteronomy 32, about when that wicked generation would be dealt with. Matthew 23, about verse 39-ish. In that generation is when they're going to have to pay, the wicked generation that was prophesied. Okay, so notice what this says, that this is going to happen. He's getting ready to tell them, to tell Jacob to summon his sons so that he can tell them about the end of the days. It's not in our time. It was past already. It was already prophesied when that would be. It says that Judah, your brothers shall praise you in verse 8. I'm going to leave that undone because I want to wrap this up here pretty quick. In verse 10, it says, the scepter shall not... Okay, I can't do this real fast. I'll try to explain this quickly. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. And to him shall be the gathering of the peoples. Mine says obedience. It should be gathering, the gathering of the peoples. Now, so you got this scepter. What does the scepter represent? Well, we know it represents royalty, but it represents more than that. It represents the power to give life and to take life, power to judge, to adjudicate, right? So you get this power. You hold the scepter. Judah had the scepter, and it would not depart until Shiloh comes. Okay, follow this. So they maintained this power of life and death. When they were in times of captivity, they were still able to judge among themselves. In the first century, we see the Sanhedrin. There were many, but we're talking about had the power of life and death, but they had to get permission from, guess who? Rome. Why didn't they just kill Jesus? You ever ask that question? Because the scepter had departed from them. The power to judge life and death had departed from them. It was taken from them by Rome. Let me see if I have the guy's name who did this. Herod Archelaus, Luke 19, I think, gives this illustration. People hated him. He was so corrupt. So when he was deposed, the Romans said, oh, no. This is it. You guys aren't doing this anymore. You're not coming up here. You're not telling us what to do. You're going to have to ask us from now on. Rome took the scepter away from Judah. They could no longer have the power of life and death, to judge, to give life, to give death. It was gone, departed. There were even, I read some of the rabbis of the time, the priests, scribes, realized what had happened. They realized that the scepter had departed from Judah. This is why in the first century they were looking for messiahs. This is why, because all of these signs were taking place. It was the end of the 70 weeks. The scepter had departed. Gifts had now come, and they had been gone for a long time, for 400 years. And so the people who were looking for Messiah, were looking for the signs, recognized the signs, and they were looking for Messiah. And some decided to take advantage of this and claim that they were the Messiah. And then when the Messiah came, he wasn't what they wanted. They rejected him, and they're still, well, really, they are not around anymore, especially in God's sight. But those who claim to be Jews are still looking for the Messiah. Hey, the scepter departed 2,000 years ago. Messiah had to come at that time. Now, once that clock starts ticking, I'm just going to say this. Maybe this will be a teaser for the next time we're able to get together. Hopefully, I can do this next week. I don't know. Once that clock started ticking, then the second coming was imminent. You got the first coming. We just read this in Hebrews 9. So he comes in the flesh. For lack of a better way to put this, it's his incarnation, right? But then he appears a second time, Hebrews 9:28, for salvation. They were all anticipating this salvation. Do a word study on eager expectation, and you'll see. I got something going with that too. That's a pretty good study. But they were eagerly waiting for him. Isn't that exactly what Hebrews 9:28 said? For those who eagerly await him, they were awaiting salvation. Let me give you a tidbit or two about this, and then we're going to go ahead and go ahead and close this. But so here's a tidbit or two. So the clock had started. Messiah had come. It was the appointed time. It was the consummation of the ages that we read about in Hebrews. And this was the accepted time. It was the appointed time. It was Isaiah 25 and verse 1. These plans being worked with perfect faithfulness, culminating at the destruction of Jerusalem when the city, it was destroyed, this fortified city. And if you don't think Jerusalem was a fortress, then look at the Tower of Antonia. Look at all of these different towers and the fortifications that they had. And the city wall was so thick you could live in it. Oh, come on. It was much more fortified than Masada ever could have been. Masada actually had more weaknesses than did Jerusalem. It fell rather quick compared to Jerusalem. Either way, you've got all of that taking place. Messiah was supposed to come. And here's another. Malachi 3 and 4 says that Elijah will come before the great and terrible day of the Lord. Now, Jesus, when questioned about this, he said, if you can accept it, John is Elijah. So John came, and we're still waiting for the great and terrible day of the Lord 2,000 years later. There's your failed hermeneutic. God didn't really mean it. He didn't really mean what he said. Time with God doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Remember, these were plans formed long ago, and they're worked with perfect faithfulness. So there's a little tidbit about why the Lord had to return in the first century. Not to mention, as we began, Matthew 16, 27, 20, Mark 8, 38, and 9, 1, clearly teaches. Jesus said, some standing here will not die until they see me coming. And you're going to have to explain it. How do you explain to the Muslims? How do you explain to the Jews and to the atheist when they say, oh, Jesus was a failed prophet? Because he clearly taught that he was coming back in their lifetime, and he did not do it. How do you explain it? You can't, unless you just let Jesus do the explaining and his apostles do the explaining. Otherwise, let me put it this way. Hey, Lucy, you got some splaining to do. And you're just going to go round and round and round. Great show, by the way. That was good. And she did that a lot. Just explained it round and round and round. And that's what we find ourselves doing. And it just becomes a joke to them. It's just humorous. Until you start explaining it the way Jesus did, the way his apostles did, the way they understood it. It doesn't matter what any of the church fathers believed. They were just following the false narrative that the Jews, the remaining Jews who rejected the Messiah and were looking for a different one, got those first century people to start believing. They hybridized it. There you go. I'm done. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this again next week, although I don't know. I kind of doubt it. Clock is ticking for me, and I am running out of time with something I have got to get done. If it doesn't happen, then I don't know. Sometimes my plans don't work with perfect faithfulness. So either way. Love everybody, and I hope you've enjoyed the study tonight. And I certainly encourage you to go back and listen to these things and study them out and see if they're right. If they are, follow them. If they're not, then figure out what's right. But I'm convinced that they're right. I offered you nothing tonight that was simply my opinion, but what we read. And if God can't speak plain enough to us to understand things, how are we ever going to figure any of this out? I think God speaks to man as man speaks to man. But we do need to do some digging and some studying. And there's some men that I talk to that I'm not going to be able to figure it out until I learn what they're saying. And that's just the way this works. We will see everybody next week. Hopefully Trent will be able to be with us next week. I'm looking forward to that if we can do it. If not, then we'll figure it out, and we'll get through it. And hopefully I'll be able to be here. So be praying for me and this mess I got to deal with. Love everybody, and we will see you next week. Don't forget to study your Bibles.